I'm Kevin, 27 years old, and until about 2 years back, I was still holding on to the hope that my family would eventually, come around. I wanted them to see me as something more than just the convenient scapegoat they'd kind of turned me into. But here's the thing, people don't just change because you want them to. Sometimes, they just double down on who they are. And when that happens, you gotta let go of the hope and start remembering who you are. I grew up as the oldest of 3 kids. Then came Rachel, who was always the golden child, and Eric, kind of the accidental afterthought, too young to really matter in any of the family drama. From the outside, it probably looked like we were a close family. You know, the usual family holiday photos, polite comments on Facebook, the whole digital front. But behind the scenes, I was the one always expected to clean up after everyone else. Like, when Rachel wrecked her car back in college, I was the one who drained my savings to help her keep it quiet so she wouldn't lose her internship. And when Mom forgot to pay the electric bill 3 months straight and tried to blame it on Eric playing video games, I quietly took care of it. No, thank you, just a little head tilt and a vague, well, that's what you're supposed to do for family, right? I kept doing it, year after year. Every favor, every dollar, every bit of emotional heavy lifting. I just gave it all without a fight. I thought that maybe, just maybe, if I kept showing up for them, they'd finally see me as someone they could actually be proud of. That whole illusion came crashing down last November, on what should have been a normal afternoon. Rachel had just gotten engaged to her boyfriend of forever, Brandon. We weren't close, but he always seemed like one of those harmlessly vanilla dudes. Wore boat shoes to Thanksgiving and said stuff like, "Killer spread, Mrs. C." Still, I was genuinely happy for her. I honestly thought this might be the moment we all finally turned a corner. I texted her congratulations, offered to help out however I could, and even volunteered to cover their honeymoon costs as a wedding gift. She just replied with a half-hearted, "THX," and I didn't think much of it at the time. Then, 2 weeks ago, I got a call from Mom while I was wrapping up at work. I still don't know if she meant for the venom in her voice to slip out, or if she just honestly didn't care that I heard it. "Don't even think about showing up to the wedding," she snapped before I could even say hello. "Rachel's finally going to have the perfect day she deserves, and we're not going to let you ruin it." I was quiet for a second, trying to figure out what the heck she was talking about. I wasn't planning on making a big speech or doing anything crazy. I was just gonna show up, clap at the right times, maybe hug a few people. "Ruin it how?" I asked slowly. Her voice dropped into that sickly sweet tone she always used when she was trying to hide something cruel. "Kevin, you've never exactly looked the part. You know that, right? You always dress like you're going to a job interview, and not a good one. And the way you kind of hover around? It's off-putting. Rachel doesn't want you in the photos. She asked me to tell you, and frankly, I agree." I swear, I couldn't breathe for a second there. It felt like my ears were ringing like crazy. All those years I'd bent over backwards for them, all that effort I put in to be supportive, and now I'm being told I don't even deserve a seat at the dang wedding. That I'd somehow ruined their perfect little family image just by existing in the background. I could even hear Rachel's voice in the background, all light and dismissive. She was laughing like this whole thing was some kind of inside joke. "Tell him he can still send a gift though," she called out. "He's still good for that." I didn't raise my voice, I didn't yell or try to defend myself. I just smiled. It was the same kind of smile I used to give my boss when he tried to dump all his work on me, the one that says, "You have no idea what I'm about to do." "Sure," I said, keeping my tone light. "I understand." She hung up without saying another word. So, I opened up my laptop, logged into the joint account I'd set up for the honeymoon gift, and reversed the transfer. Boom, $4,200 back into my pocket in like 5 seconds. I took a screenshot of the reversal and texted it to Mom with a simple caption, "I wouldn't want to ruin anything." No reply, of course. but I know she saw it. She's always obsessively reading messages. Now here's the part they really don't know. Last year, I quietly invested in a chain of mid-tier wedding venues that were struggling after the whole pandemic thing. And get this, one of them happened to be the exact location Rachel was bragging about booking on Instagram. Lakeview Ridge. You know, the one with the big white gazebo and the overpriced brunch menu. The second I recognized it in her post, I double-checked my emails. Yup. It was under our portfolio. Not only did I partially own the place, but I also had the final say on all big events held there. Including, say, weddings. At first, I thought about just pulling the plug, you know? Just canceling the whole booking and watching them scramble. But that felt too easy. Too quick. They wouldn't feel it. They wouldn't understand it. I wanted them to stew in their own smugness for a little longer. I wanted them to keep posting their countdown stories, their dress fittings, their arguments about the seating chart. I wanted them to laugh behind my back just a few more times. So, instead, I've been watching. Patiently. Waiting. I made a few quiet calls to the event coordinator at Lakeview Ridge, just asking to be notified if there were any, concerns, or issues, with the Carson wedding reservation. I also reviewed the contract. And let me tell you, that thing is airtight. Except for one tiny clause buried deep down in the fine print. Full payment is required 10 days before the event, or the booking is considered forfeited. Not delayed, not postponed, forfeited. The wedding is in 12 days. And as of this morning, no final payment has been submitted. I didn't need to do anything just yet. Just wait. Watch. Let them keep treating me like a footnote. Like a burden they'd rather crop out of the pictures. Let them keep smiling for the camera, completely unaware that the floor they're standing on was laid by the one person they deemed worthy of standing beside them. It's amazing how quick people are to forget where their money comes from once you stop handing it over in silence. I hadn't heard a single peep from Rachel or my mom since that phone call. Not even a half-hearted, "Hey, maybe you could come to the rehearsal dinner as a peace offering." Nothing. Just silence and pure smugness. But here's the thing about silence, it lets you hear everything they're not saying out loud. I spent the next few days doing something I hadn't done in a long time, just living my life without them. I hit the gym again, cleaned up my apartment, even took myself out to dinner. For once, my phone wasn't blowing up with requests for favors or emergency money transfers. It was peaceful, quiet in a way that felt earned. Like the calm before a controlled storm, you know? But then, 5 days before the wedding, I got a notification from Amy, the venue's coordinator. She's been with Lakeview Ridge for years and has seen more family meltdowns than a therapist. She's sharp, composed, and maybe a little too observant for her own good. Her message was short and polite, but the subtext was crystal clear. "Hey Kevin, just checking in. The Carson party still hasn't submitted the final payment. I've sent out 2 reminders with no reply. Let me know how you want to handle it, since we're getting close to the deadline." I called her back that afternoon, and we talked it over. I kept my tone casual, professional. "If it's not paid by the deadline, we'll consider the booking void, per our policy. Just follow the contract." Amy hesitated for a second. "You sure about that, Kevin? I mean, they're really banking on this thing. They've got, 15 vendors scheduled. A whole live string quartet. And I think they're planning on releasing doves during the vows." I smiled faintly. "Doves? Huh. Classy." She laughed quietly. "Okay. I'll follow protocol. Deadline's in 2 days." Now, I could have warned them. I could have just texted Rachel a simple, "Hey, just so you know, your payment's late." But I didn't, because they made it pretty clear I wasn't family. Not important enough to stand in a photo. Not important enough to get a chair. Just a walking wallet with a pulse. And that's when I decided I wasn't going to interfere at all. I was just gonna let the natural consequences of their carelessness do all the work for me. On the morning of the deadline, I took the day off from work and treated myself to a good breakfast, eggs, coffee, and extra crispy bacon. I checked my email around noon. Still nothing. No payment. No message. No, oh my gosh, we totally forgot. Just radio silence. That night, Amy marked the booking as cancelled in our system. At 7:18 p.m., I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I just let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, another call from the same number. So, I finally picked up. "Hi, is this Kevin?" "This is Teresa. I'm Rachel's wedding planner." I nearly laughed out loud. Of course it was. "Yes," I said, keeping my voice as neutral as possible. "So, we're just trying to sort out a minor issue with the venue. I understand there was some kind of system error and the final payment didn't go through. Probably just a glitch with our account. But we were hoping to confirm that everything's still on track for Saturday." I leaned back in my chair and glanced up at the ceiling. No system error. The payment deadline passed last night. The booking's been released. Silence. I could hear her breathing and, in the background, the muffled sound of someone arguing. Then her voice returned, all thin and nervous. "But surely you can make an exception, right? I mean, this is a once-in-a-lifetime event. The bride's already got her gown. Guests are flying in from out of state." "Teresa," I interrupted gently. "I understand. But the contract is the contract. If they wanted the date locked in, they should have paid on time. We've been more than generous with reminders." She stammered for a bit before trailing off with a shaky, I'll talk to Rachel." The next call came less than an hour later. This time, it was Mom. "Kevin," she barked, no greeting or anything. "What is going on with the venue?" "Rachel is in tears. They said the booking was cancelled because of you." I just raised an eyebrow. "Me? I didn't cancel anything. The deadline passed. I just happened to know the coordinator there." "You knew about this and you didn't say anything? You let this happen?" "Let what happen? You mean, I didn't step in and cover for your mistake, again?" There was a beat of silence. Then her voice turned cold as ice. "Do you really hate your sister that much?" "No," I said slowly, clearly. "I just finally decided to stop letting you all treat me like I'm disposable. You said I'd ruin the photos, so I just took myself out of the picture." "You always have to make it about you," she spat. "No," I said again, quieter this time. "You made it about me the second you decided I wasn't worth a chair at your perfect wedding. I'm just following your lead." She hung up without saying another word. That night, I got a text from Rachel. No greeting, no emoji, just this: "You seriously couldn't have warned us?" And then, a second later, "Wow. You're a bitter little man." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because the next part? That was entirely in my hands now. The venue was gone. Their dream wedding had no foundation anymore. Vendors were pulling out left and right. The doves were staying caged, and they still had no idea just how deep this rabbit hole really went. Because while they were scrambling to find a last-minute replacement location, I was sitting on a little secret of my own. They thought the worst had already happened. They had no idea that I wasn't even close to being done yet. The following morning, I woke up to a dozen new texts and 3 missed calls, 2 from Rachel and 1 from Brandon. The texts ranged from thinly veiled guilt trips, "This is still family, Kevin, no matter what happened," to flat-out insults, "I can't believe you're so petty that you'd sabotage your own sister's wedding." I read them all over coffee, scrolling through without reacting. They didn't know the half of it. See, Rachel and Brandon had spent the last year parading this wedding around like it was some kind of royal event. Magazine-style engagement. Immense photos, a custom website with a countdown ticker, and a color palette with 4 different shades of soft champagne. The venue wasn't just a pretty place to have the wedding, it was the entire brand. Lakeview Ridge was the backdrop in every one of their online posts, on their Pinterest board, and even on the RSVP envelopes, they had a watercolor painting of the freakin' gazebo. It was this curated fantasy, and they'd built it all on borrowed money and other people's generosity, including mine. They hadn't told anyone I was paying for the honeymoon, either. They just took the money, smiled for Instagram, and acted like it was something Brandon had just pulled out of thin air. The worst part is, I was actually proud of them. I honestly wanted them to have a beautiful start together. But apparently, the ugly brother just didn't fit the theme. And now, with only 4 days to go, the clock was ticking. They were scrambling to find a new venue, and I knew exactly what that whole process looked like from the inside. Nothing decent was going to be available on such short notice, especially not one that could accommodate the huge number of guests they were expecting. And even if they did find a backup venue, everything from their floral arrangements to the ceremony setup would have to be completely redone. But here's the real kicker, they'd bragged for months about the custom package they'd negotiated at Lakeview Ridge. What they didn't know was that Amy, the coordinator, had only given them that rate because I told her to. I wanted to gift it to them without the awkwardness. Now that the booking was void, that rate was gone. If they managed to rebook anywhere, it would cost them double, if we even let them back in the door in the first place. I got another call that afternoon, this time from Brandon. "Hey Kevin, listen, I know there's been some tension, but I just wanted to clear the air, man to man." I didn't say a word, just letting him squirm in the silence. He cleared his throat. "Look, Rachel's been really upset, man. This wedding means a lot to her, and to both of us. I'm sure we can figure something out, right? You've got connections at the venue. You could pull a few strings, maybe get us back in." "Brandon," I said calmly, "did you even know that I was the one paying for your honeymoon?" He was quiet for a second. "What? The honeymoon?" "Yeah, the resort package you two posted about. The one with the villa and the private chef. That was me, $4,200. I sent it over 2 months ago." No, I didn't know that." "Of course you didn't," I said. "Because your fiancée didn't want you to. She told me that I'd ruin the photos and that she didn't want me there. So, I took back the honeymoon. And now, you're asking me to step in and rescue the wedding?" Another pause. I could practically picture him sitting there, staring blankly at the wall like a kid realizing he forgot to do his homework. "I'm not trying to take sides here," he said, his voice getting quieter. "But I just don't think you understand how stressed Rachel is. This is her day." I almost laughed right then. "Oh, I understand perfectly. I just don't care anymore." Click. 3 hours later, I got an email from Amy with the subject line, "Update on Carson's." I opened it up. In short, Rachel had called the venue, sobbing and claiming that she was blindsided by the cancellation. She'd Asian. That it was unfair and completely unethical. She demanded to speak to the owner directly. Amy asked me if I wanted to respond personally. I told her, not yet. Instead, I did something even better. I logged into the venue's website backend and added a small update to their homepage. It simply read, "Please note, Lakeview Ridge is proud to host a private corporate event on April 27th. No wedding bookings will be honored on this date." That was their wedding day. I didn't use their names. I didn't even have to. Anyone who was frantically looking for a last-minute rebooking would see it right away. And every other venue in the surrounding area would just assume we were booked solid. I had just quietly turned off the lights on every single backup plan they had. That night, my aunt messaged me. Aunt Claire texted, "Hi sweetheart. Can we talk? Rachel's devastated. Your mom is beside herself." I just stared at it for a while. Then I replied, "She said I'd ruin her photos." I took that seriously. She just left me on read after that. The next morning, their group chat lit up. Not my group chat, theirs. My cousin forwarded me some screenshots. My mom was absolutely furious, blaming me, blaming Amy, maybe even blaming Mercury being in retrograde for all I know. She ranted about how this wasn't how family treated each other, and how she'd bent over backwards to include me. Then Rachel chimed in with this gem: "He's been jealous since high school. I always knew he'd find a way to make this about him." Jealous. That word hit me like a slap in the face wrapped in silk. Jealous of what, exactly? The curated spotlight she lived under? The endless stream of fake compliments and whispered betrayals? I'd built everything I owned by working quietly while they posed for pictures. I gave without asking for credit or recognition. And now, apparently, I was the bitter one for not letting them set me on fire one more time. So, I made a choice. I forwarded everything to Amy and said, "You can respond now. Tell them the owner reviewed the situation and has denied the rebooking, per policy." Then, I picked up the phone and made one more call. A friend of mine named Carter runs a high-end catering company downtown. He owed me a favor. I asked him for a little something for Saturday. Nothing big, just a modest, corporate luncheon for 10 people. Same day, same time, same venue. He laughed out loud. "You want me to book the place out on their wedding day?" "Not just book it," I said. "I want photos. Instagram. The whole 9 yards. Tag the venue and hashtag the event. Make it look like the best catered celebration of the year." He was quiet for a second. "Damn, Kevin. You're really doing this, huh?" I smiled. "They asked me not to show up to the wedding, so I won't. But that doesn't mean I won't leave my mark." Saturday finally arrived with the kind of weather that brides practically pray for: crisp air, not a single cloud in the sky, and soft sunlight filtering through the early spring leaves. The lake at Lakeview Ridge was still reflective as glass, and the white gazebo gleamed against a backdrop of cherry blossoms just starting to bud. It was perfect, absolutely idyllic, and not at all what Rachel was expecting. I got up early that morning, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to. To savor every single minute of it. I took my sweet time showering, brewed some of the really good coffee, and even ironed my shirt. Not to wear, just to feel a little sharper, you know? Then, I sat down by the window, phone in hand, and watched the chaos start to unfold in real time. The very first post came from a distant cousin, who was also Rachel's old college roommate. It was a confused-looking selfie of her in her car, and it read, "Is the venue closed? Just got here and no one's answering the gate. Please tell me that I'm not the only one who didn't get a cancellation notice." I took another sip of my coffee and refreshed the tagged posts. More started to trickle in, bridesmaids in full makeup, standing outside the locked gate with their arms crossed, groomsmen in rental tuxedos, pacing back and forth beside parked cars, and a flower girl asleep in someone's back seat, her tiara sliding right off. They hadn't told anyone. That was the part that I honestly hadn't expected. I figured Rachel or my mom would have done some kind of damage control, maybe sent out a mass text or something. But nope. They were so convinced that everything would magically work out in the end, so sure that someone, Reed, me, would just swoop in to save them at the last second, that they hadn't even bothered to warn their own guests. Pure entitlement turned into complete paralysis. Then, the post that made me laugh out loud showed up. It was from Lakeview Ridge itself, and it read, "Lakeview Ridge is hosting a beautiful lakeside luncheon for a special team today. Nothing beats a little sunshine, fresh spring air, and great food to celebrate big wins. Hashtag private event, hashtag booked out, hashtag corporate luxury. There were 3 long tables draped in white linen, crystal glassware sparkling in the sun, and waiters in black vests serving drinks. And in the background, barely visible but completely unmistakable, was Rachel's custom floral arch that had now been repurposed as the dessert bar for our luncheon. The sign she had commissioned from some Etsy artist that read, "Forever starts here," had been flipped around and relettered by Carter's team to say, "Success starts here." I seriously wish I could have seen her face at that very moment. Around noon, I got a call from Amy. I answered it immediately. "Kevin," she said, barely holding back a chuckle. "We have guests trying to climb over the side gate." I laughed out loud. "Please tell me that's a joke." "Nope. One of the groomsmen swears he knows someone inside the venue. I told them the property is under a private booking and that security has been notified." "Did they bring the doves?" "Oh, yes," she said. "2 handlers and a crate. They're sitting on the curb looking very, very confused." I chuckled again, but this time a little slower. "You've been amazing, Amy. Seriously. I owe you big for this." "You don't owe me anything," she said. "This is the best Saturday shift I've had in years." At 2:41 p.m., the inevitable finally happened. My mom called. I just let it ring. Then Rachel called, followed by Brandon, and then even my aunt. I didn't answer a single one of them. Instead, I opened up the family group text, the one I was still silently a part of even though they'd stopped tagging me months ago. I typed exactly 2 words, "You're welcome." Then, I left the chat. That night, I heard from Eric, my younger brother, who was the only one in the family who'd ever treated me like an actual person. He hadn't been at the wedding. He'd called me the day after I reversed the honeymoon fund and said, "If they're going to act like you don't exist, then I'm not pretending. They're saints." He stayed quiet and respectful, but I could hear in his voice that he'd finally had enough too. His message was short and to the point, "Eric, I saw the posts. I don't even know what to say. But I'm proud of you." They needed to be humbled. "I'll call you tomorrow." And for once, I actually felt it. Not just pride, not just relief, but closure. Because here's the truth, people like Rachel, like my mother, they build their whole world on optics, on appearances. The seating charts, the dress fittings, and the stories they'll tell over drinks 5 years from now. What I gave them wasn't just a ruined wedding, it was a shattered illusion. No one would remember how stunning her dress was. They'd remember standing outside a locked venue in heels for 2 hours. They'd remember the doves that never flew. They'd remember the luncheon that was served to a bunch of corporate stiffs while the wedding guests stood out in the parking lot, scratching their heads. They'd remember the whispered questions, "Why didn't they pay? Didn't they have any help?" And eventually, someone would point out that maybe, just maybe, Rachel wasn't the victim in all this. Maybe the brother she tried to erase had simply said, "Enough is enough." 2 days later, my mother showed up at my door. She didn't knock, she freakin' pounded on it. I waited a minute, then opened it slowly. She looked absolutely exhausted. Her mascara had dried into the wrinkles under her eyes, her blazer was all wrinkled, and her posture was completely hunched over. But her tone? Still as sharp as ever. "You think you proved something?" she hissed. "No," I said calmly. "I know I did. You've humiliated your sister." I just looked at her for a long time. "She humiliated me. And you did too, for years. You just thought I'd keep taking it, that I'd always show up, clean up, and keep quiet. Not anymore." She stepped forward like she wanted to argue, like she had some whole speech prepared to unleash on me. But I didn't give her the space to do it. I bought the venue. I paid for the honeymoon. I supported this family when no one else would. And you just erased me for the sake of appearances. So, this time, you got erased. She just stood there, trembling with anger. But she didn't say anything else. Finally, I added, you can tell Rachel that I'm not angry. I'm free. And that's a way better gift than anything on her registry. Then, I shut the door. A month passed, then two. I didn't hear from them at all. Eric and I started grabbing dinner twice a week. We'd talk about work, about life, and sometimes, we even laughed about the great wedding disaster of the year. I'd also gotten a few sly messages from people who had actually been at the event, congratulating me without really saying what they were congratulating me for. And that was enough for me. I didn't need a parade, I didn't need some big public moment of validation. I had peace. I had power. And for the first time in years, I had a family that I chose, not the one that just tried to edit me out of their perfect picture. So, I took the frame. And I burned it to the ground.